what's good? Welcome into the show. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic weekend and you have done something that is fun and fulfilling. And hopefully today's Eagles Now going to be fulfilling and enriching, to use another big word, because there's a lot that we want to uncover here on today's show. First, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Whenever the Eagles make a move, whenever there's a big storyline, whenever there's a big report or rumor, or if you want some top-notch, elite Eagles analysis, this is your go-to spot. Hit that sub button. How quickly can we get to 77,000 subscribers? Let's start off today's mailbag with this question coming in from Jeff Phillips. What is the likelihood of the Eagles getting Justin Simmons? A lot of people are going to enjoy this question. A lot of people are fatigued by it because we have talked a lot about Justin Simmons throughout this offseason. Why? Philadelphia has been linked to him on numerous occasions because they have a weakness at that safety spot. It's a little bit of a void on this roster. You do have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, in addition to Reed Blankenship, but Sidney Brown's coming off a torn ACL. And then that other backup safety spot is kind of up for grabs right now. And Justin Simmons would make this defense better. He's a four-time All-Pro. The Eagles struggled to generate turnovers last year. They were minus 10 in their turnover differential. Justin Simmons, since coming into the league in 2016 out of Boston College, third-round pick by the Denver Broncos, leads the NFL in interceptions, and he played under Vic Fangio. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I think the likelihood is pretty good because the Eagles have cap space, they have a need, and especially if an injury happens at some point at the start of training camp, they could look to go that route. Plus, according to James Palmer, NFL Insider, Justin Simmons wants to go somewhere where he can win. He can win with Philadelphia. Also checks the character box. He was a team captain for the Denver Broncos. Flipping the Bird 85, $20 donation. Thank you so much, my brother. I think all their needs to be extended, but I'd say Goddard, Sweaty J, and Milton Williams in that order. Chug that boot, boy. Hey, preseason games coming up. We're going to be doing watch parties for all preseason games, watch parties for all regular season games. Boots will be had. And we're talking about the Das boot. 3 beers, 1 boot. Part of the reason why Flipping the Bird is asking this question, or more so making a comment, we did a video on 3 contract extension candidates for Philadelphia. Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Dallas Goedert. So he's putting those players in order for which players he'd say the Eagles should sign to contract extensions. I think Goedert, very valuable to what the Eagles do as a pass catcher and blocker. I think Josh Sweat has been a great player development story for Philadelphia, a consistent pass rusher who's getting a little bit older, but has still been highly productive. Pressure rate, sack numbers certainly back that up. And then Milton Williams, one of my favorite breakout candidates for this year. He's going into a pretty big 2024 campaign. Dennis Designs, good question here. Do you think that Jalen Hurts is better than Donovan McNabb? I do not think that Jalen Hurts is better than Donovan McNabb right now, but that can soon change. If Jalen Hurts gets back to his 2022 form, if he becomes consistent for a long time, if he wins a Super Bowl, it's all over, right? Now, a lot of people don't realize that Donovan McNabb, for about a 5-year stretch to start this century in the early 2000s, was the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL behind Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. He did not have the longevity of Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, but he was truly elite and the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL in the early 2000s. So good as a dual threat quarterback. And it's not like he had supremely talented weapons around him at the wide receiver spot. He pretty much had Terrell Owens for 1 full season. That was it before that fell apart. Todd Pinkston, Freddie Mitchell, Reggie Brown, Kevin Curtis, they are not number ones in this league. Now, he did have Brian Westbrook there for a little while. Pretty good tight end play, but not elite tight end play, with Chad Lewis and E.J. Smith. But look, Donovan McNabb also had his shortcomings. And Jalen Hurts, because of those shortcomings, can become a better player. The game has also changed where it's more pass happy now. And I think that Hurts' deep ball accuracy, really good. His consistent accuracy in general, better than McNabb, who would throw some worm balls from time to time. But McNabb doesn't get the credit that he deserves for being with the Eagles from 1999 to 2009 and going to 5 NFC championship games and 1 Super Bowl. 4 of those NFC title games were in a row. And Donovan McNabb played a huge role in that success. 6-time Pro Bowler, 2000 to 2004, and again in 2009. Already an Eagles Hall of Famer. If he won a Super Bowl, Donovan McNabb would be in Canton. He'd be a Hall of Famer. The lack of accuracy, an issue for him for sure. Completion percentage for his career at 59%. So to answer your question, Jalen Hurts not better than Donovan McNabb yet, but has the opportunity to go down as the best Eagles quarterback in the history of this organization if he continues to be consistent, returns back to that 2022 form, and wins that Super Bowl. BDG Bullet, do you think that if Jason Kelce becomes a coach, that the offensive line will improve a lot? There's not really a lot of room to improve that offensive line because they've been elite for a long time. Number one, Howie Roseman has always invested in that offensive line as part of his team building strategy. It's always the position group that he focuses on outside of the quarterback and outside of bulking up that defensive line on the defensive side of the ball. The Eagles have done a really good job of drafting and developing offensive linemen and then also signing offensive linemen in free agency, a la, a Jason Peters. How about what they've done with the development, though, of Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata as a former rugby player? A lot of that is due to Jeff Stoutland being this team's offensive line coach. He's the best offensive line coach in football. So when you have Howie Roseman, who puts resources into the offensive line, and then you have Jeff Stoutland coaching them up, it leads to the Eagles being a terrific offensive line team and them having a terrific offensive line unit. Now, if Jason Kelce becomes an offensive line coach at some point, given his playing career, a future Hall of Famer, best center in the history of this organization, and him learning under Jeff Stoutland, I think that he can succeed in that role. But the Eagles' offensive line has already been fantastic. Stoutland is 62. Does Kelce take over for him at some point? It wouldn't be crazy to me. It wouldn't surprise me. Jesus M., will the Eagles' tackling improve? I hope so. Earlier this week, we did a very interesting show that I haven't seen anybody else talk about on YouTube. And it was a report from Tim McManus of ESPN talking about the Eagles' practice habits going into training camp, which begins on Tuesday. And led by Vic Fangio and a collaboration between him and Nick Sirianni, the Eagles are going to coach longer, practice longer. And as part of that, I imagine they're going to put the pads on a little bit more. They're going to try to up the physicality. They're going to tackle to the ground a little bit more often. And they're going to be a more physical football team. And I think in turn, they're going to improve their tackling. Under Nick Sirianni, historically, the Eagles have practiced less as far as overall volume of practices. Last year, they did more walkthroughs. But teams in the new CBA are allotted to practice for an hour and a half. Sometimes Eagles practices would be an hour and 10 minutes. Vic Fangio got in the ear of Nick Sirianni and said, we have to practice more. And I think that helps out the fundamentals, the sloppiness, the Eagles being more organized, more in sync, more in rhythm. And that's something to keep an eye out for in 2024. Dennis designs a $50 super chat. Howie's been quiet lately. He may be up to a big move. I am thinking with Cooper DeJean at the slot, we can release Avonte Maddox once and for all. He will never be a safety. I think Avonte Maddox getting safety reps is like worst case scenario. He did play safety in that wild card round against Tampa Bay, and I don't like the instincts that he has. He's a little bit small for that position. When he's played safety, sometimes he's over pursued a little bit. I think it's strictly just a depth type of let's see what he can do at that safety spot because we're a little bit thin at the safety position. Keep in mind, Philadelphia was willing to experiment with James Bradbury getting safety reps. You make a good point with Cooper DeJean. I think he's this team's best capable player and has the most ability in playing slot nickel. That's been my thought all along. I don't think he's an outside guy at the NFL level. I think he's a slot guy, and I think you use him in a Malcolm Jenkins way. Versatile chess piece, C.J. Gardner-Johnson way, Swiss Army knife, Tyrann Mathieu type of player, Trent McDuffie. You put him in that role where he can make plays on the football in the pass game, make plays against the run, but be instinctual to be in the slot nickel. Play a little hybrid linebacker. Include them in blitz packages. Maximize your playmakers. As for Howie Roseman making a big move, what could it be? I don't think the Niners are going to trade away Brandon Ayuk. I don't think the Eagles are going to make a trade for a guy like Brandon Ayuk. But could Howie Roseman say, F it. Brandon Ayuk's on the final year of his deal. We have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. We have questions at wide receiver 3. Let's take away from a great team in the Niners who we're competing with and against for NFC supremacy. Take them away, and we'll give them a contract extension because it makes them worse and makes us better. Again, that would be a shocking move. I think it's more of off-ball linebacker, safety. Maybe the Eagles try to fortify defensive end, defensive tackle a little bit. Maybe they sign Justin Simmons or another safety. Andrew Nathan, Chase, how do you think Vic Fangio will impact training camp practices, and do you expect to see a free agency signing on defense or a free agency signing on offense by the end of next week? I think the Eagles are going to have a little bit of a buffer zone at the start of training camp to see where their roster is. Let's see how the safeties perform. Let's see if there are any injuries that happen. And that's to be said for probably both sides of the football, right? As far as Vic Fangio impacting training camp practices, I talked about that earlier on the show. I think they're going to be a little bit more physical. And with the experience that he has, I know the Eagles are adapting to a new scheme, but that defense was firing on all cylinders during the spring. They dominated a new offensive system with Kellen Moore during OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And Vic Fangio is going to be hard on these players. He's going to hold them accountable. And he has so much more experience as compared to Sean Desai, who had 1 year play calling experience. So the Eagles' defense is going to be much more organized. And I can't wait to see it. So longer practices, more physical practices, and then he's going to coach these players up. Not going to let bullshit fly. Be sure to subscribe to us here on Eagles Now. Have a fantastic end to your weekend. And with Eagles training camp getting underway, we're going to give you some great updates right here on the show.